Okay, in this video, what I wanted to do was just quickly jump on and give a bit of a reflection on something that I've seen with agencies, specifically the ones that don't succeed, so you can just skip the BS and get straight to succeeding. I talk with a lot of agencies in different capacities, and this is basically one of the biggest things that they need to be aware of, because this isn't something that's just costing you maybe one or two clients every now and then. This is something that is costing agencies months and months of progress and up to years for some people. And it's the reason that you see some people plateau and just never break past certain points. So if you're hitting these sorts of plateaus consistently and you just want to reach past that level, but it almost feels like you can't break it, or you just feel like things aren't working as well as they should, and you feel like I'm really, really skilled, it's just that something's wrong, it's really likely that what I'm talking about in this video is going to apply to you. And the number one thing that is holding these people back, with as much respect as possible, is just coping. And when I say coping, I mean choosing not to look at reality for exactly what it is in favor of some sort of self-preservation or self-protection. And it's what it kind of looks like is finding an excuse, finding a reason, choosing to hold a certain set of beliefs that will protect your ego, rather than just looking reality straight down the barrel and thinking this is the case, this is exactly what's going on. I am not removed from reality at all, because as soon as you start getting that little removed from reality, or you build this bubble around you where you're not getting that direct feedback that might be a little bit brutal, or it might be not what you want to hear, or it might shatter your ego or your own vision of yourself, it starts getting a little bit tough, and it might come out in the way that you might think, oh no, I don't have bandwidth for that thing's too hard. The reason I messed up was because of X or Y or Z thing, or whatever it may have been, or the reason we churned the client was this, it was someone else's fault, it was the sales rep, it was the CSM, or the reason we're not making money right now is because of the market conditions, or my offer's saturated, or it's way too hard because of everyone else and not me. I could literally talk about these things all day, because I literally, when I'm talking to people in the agency space, it's ridiculous how frequently this occurs. And like I just said, throughout people that I know in the space, you literally see it all the time. It's very, very consistent with people that hit a certain revenue mark and then they never break past it. They get stuck there for 6 to 12 months. And it's a good thing that you'd probably often hear from Hormozy, is that if you're not growing consistently, you're probably doing the wrong stuff. There's probably something wrong, or something you're looking at incorrectly that you're just not choosing to look at, or you're not able to look at. And people always talk about, from the outside looking in, it's a lot easier to see someone's problems, or it's easier to see someone else's problems rather than our own. But a really good way of getting around that is just to stop coping and just look at reality for exactly what it is, because quite often the thing that we don't want to look at, that we don't let ourselves look at, because it's going to shatter our idea of ourselves, is the exact thing that is holding us back from growing. So for example, if it's the reason that we're not growing is because you suck at sales, or because I suck at sales, or the reason we're not growing is because I suck at cold email, or I suck at operations, or I suck at any of this stuff, it's much more difficult in the short term to look at that very directly and say, look, I have a skill issue, and the reason we're not growing is my fault, which a lot of the times, 9 out of 10 times, it will be your fault. But you're able to break these plateaus and break past these levels and these consistent issues and figure out what the real problem is much, much faster than the person who takes six months just of pure coping, compared to the person that takes maybe 2 weeks of coping. You might cope for 2 weeks, or you might cope for a week and just have this idea where you're a little bit wrong, you're a little bit off, you're disjointed from reality. And that means when you only take a week or 2 weeks or a month or however long, the rest of that time, maybe 5 months, however long you were going to cope, or you used to cope, as you're continually ironing this issue out, is the time that you gain, which obviously gives you a bit of a flywheel, because let's say person A spends 6 months just disregarding the fact that they are the problem, compared to person B who identifies that they're the problem within 7 days. That is going to be a very, very different future for those two people, because the person who's taken too long, they take 6 months of just not even knowing what the problem is, whereas the person in 7 days can identify that problem and fix that problem in one tenth the time that the person who took 6 months even figuring out what the problem was would take to eventually solve it, because they have to obviously identify the problem, then fix it after that. And it's almost night and day. And you can imagine how different that would be when the person solves a problem in 7 days or 2 weeks, compared to 6 months, 12 months, over 10, 15, 20 years in a really long-term game. people that cope all day can't really make it. So I'll give you an example of a sales rep. I used to know a lot of sales reps, and a lot of times, obviously, sales reps, they're not performing as well as they want to be. Not because they're not good, but just because they have really high standards. They want to say, oh, I want to close this, I want to close that. And they might spend hours and hours and hours complaining. They'll say it's the leads, they'll say it's the funnel, it's marketing's fault, it's the offer's fault. Oh, I just need to get a better opportunity vehicle, I just need to get a better this, better that. And you might be that, it might be those things, but in reality, a lot of the time it's just cope. It might be just cope, because a lot of times it's a skill issue, like I said, and it's probably because you're not executing the way that you should have been. Maybe it was your mindset. Maybe it was because you're not showing up the right way. Maybe you should have pivoted your tonality. And a really good framework for this is just, instead of looking outward, just look inward whenever something's going wrong, because when you do that, obviously you can switch it, fix it up, get back on what you're doing, and kind of just use that as a continual case study and get a good feedback loop of shattering your own vision of yourself, or your own preconceived ideas of your own abilities and stuff like that. Because if you're not getting the result, something's wrong. If your ad funnel's not converting, if your cold emails aren't working, if you're sending thousands and thousands of cold emails and you're not getting responses, you're not signing clients, it's because you are not good enough yet, and that's completely fine. And like I said, I think a really good, easy way of fixing this, instead of looking at it as something where you're completely broken just because you don't know how to do something, it's just that you don't have the skill yet. You haven't got the skill, and you just look at it as you're not meant to be perfect. And obviously, it's a really cliche thing where people will say, "Oh, no one's perfect," yada yada yada. But I think the problem is that we obviously want to be perfect, but we have this idea of ourselves, and we talk that type of talk, and you build yourself up to the people around you to the point where if you did make a mistake, it would almost be breaking that kind of false frame that you hold with the people around you, with your circle on social media, wherever you're going to be, and it just leads to bad things. Because truthfully, it would be more perfect of you to be able to quickly identify the problems within yourself and fix them, rather than to hold up this frame of never having a problem with yourself. So it would be more perfect to actually be very quick at identifying, this is wrong with me, this is wrong with me, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, I suck here, I'm bad here, I'm bad here, I'm bad here. Because that person who knows all of these things, they're very good at identifying their own personal bottlenecks, is able to quickly iron them out and quickly solve them. And if you think you're the person that doesn't have any personal bottlenecks, I might have some news for you, because as cringe as it is, like I said, no one's perfect, and you probably don't need to hear that for the 50th time from some dickhead on YouTube, but it is just a fact of life. So the sooner that you can accept that you are not really overly special, I wouldn't imagine that you're the Messiah himself or anything like that. The goal is to identify your inner bottlenecks faster than anyone else, or faster than your competition, and solve those problems faster, rather than to just hold up this facade that you are, problemless and you're perfect, because it's not going to lead to anything good. It's going to lead to 6 to 12 months of coping. You're going to be messing up. Your team's going to get annoyed. Everything's going to be going wrong, and you're not going to know why. Just because you chose, or you didn't even choose, it's kind of a subconscious choice to not look at reality for exactly what it is. So I implore you, avoid that. Don't cope. Stop the cope as soon as you can. Everyone does this. I still do this. It's a reminder. This video is a reminder to myself just as much as it is a reminder to everyone else. The less you cope, the more success you'll have in your life, and the better relationships you'll have. And people respect you for taking accountability. Even if you did mess up, even if you did have the problem, people will respect you more for having accountability. So stop the cope in 2024. We don't do that in 2024. And hope you like this video.